Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that often goes unnoticed but has the power to shape the course of our relationships more than we realize. It's something that affects our connection with everyone around us, our friends, our family, our colleagues, and even the person we see in the mirror every day. I'm talking about avoidance. Avoidance can seem like a simple, harmless response to discomfort or fear, but its impact on relationships is far-reaching. It influences how we communicate, how we trust, and how we ultimately connect or disconnect with others. Now, think about this for a moment. When you avoid a conversation, a conflict, or a feeling, what happens? You don't just dodge a tough moment. You're creating gaps that can grow into canyons over time. So let's break it down. Avoidance prevents authentic connection in ways we often don't realize until it's too late. Think about the moments when you've felt truly understood and supported by someone, whether it's a friend, family member, or partner. What made that moment meaningful? It wasn't just that you were in the same place at the same time. It wasn't just the words that were spoken. What truly deepens a connection is when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We let down our guard, share our true thoughts and feelings, and reveal the parts of ourselves that aren't always perfect. That kind of vulnerability invites connection on a deeper level. When we avoid those vulnerable moments, those tough conversations, uncomfortable emotions, or difficult truths, we are essentially blocking the most important part of a relationship, authenticity. It might feel safer to avoid bringing up sensitive topics or to sidestep potential conflict, but in doing so, we deny ourselves and others the chance to engage in something meaningful. Avoidance doesn't just protect us, it creates an emotional wall between us and the people around us. Imagine a situation where you've been feeling overwhelmed or upset about something, but you choose to keep it to yourself instead of sharing it with the people who matter most to you. Maybe you avoid the conversation because you're afraid of being judged or rejected. At first, this might seem like a smart move. After all, avoiding conflict feels like a way to maintain peace. But what happens in the long run? You may start to feel isolated. You may withdraw from others even more because they don't know what's going on with you. The truth is, when we avoid expressing our true emotions, it creates a barrier between our inner selves and the outer world. The people in our lives don't get to see us for who we really are, and we miss out on the opportunity to connect with them on a deeper level. The same thing happens in any relationship. Whether it's with a partner, friend, or family member, when we avoid being real, we create a distance. It's like we're wearing a mask, acting as if everything is fine, but inside we're carrying the weight of unspoken truths. And the more we keep avoiding, the heavier that mask becomes. Over time, that weight becomes harder to carry, and the distance between us and the people we care about only grows. Authentic connection thrives on honesty and openness, and when we choose avoidance instead of vulnerability, we rob ourselves of that connection. We may believe that we're protecting ourselves by staying silent or ignoring difficult issues, but in reality, we're pushing others away. By choosing to avoid tough moments, we aren't just avoiding discomfort. We're avoiding the possibility of deeper understanding, trust, and intimacy. Avoidance prevents us from being seen for who we truly are, and it keeps the people we care about from seeing us too. And that is the heart of why avoidance stifles the very connections we crave. Avoidance creates distance in relationships, often in subtle and insidious ways. At first, avoiding difficult conversations or uncomfortable situations may seem harmless. After all, who likes conflict or confrontation? It can feel easier to simply walk away or ignore the problem for a while. But over time, avoidance doesn't just prevent problems from being solved, it erodes the very foundation of the relationship itself. When we avoid dealing with something that's bothering us, we may think we're sparing ourselves and others from unnecessary discomfort. However, what we're really doing is placing a wall between ourselves and the other person. That wall might not be visible at first, but it starts to build brick by brick. Each time we avoid a conversation or ignore a feeling, we're adding another layer of distance. This distance might seem small in the beginning, but as time passes, the gap grows wider and harder to bridge. Consider a relationship where one person continuously avoids conflict or difficult conversations. Initially, it might seem like they're simply being peaceful, not wanting to rock the boat. But what happens when important issues go unaddressed? Resentments begin to build, frustrations grow, and the feeling of emotional disconnect intensifies. The person who is avoiding the issue may feel relief in the short term, but the other person, the one who feels ignored or unheard, begins to feel neglected or undervalued. Over time, these feelings can lead to a sense of emotional distance that neither person intended. The irony is that avoidance doesn't actually protect us from the discomfort of conflict. It just postpones it. And in the process, it can make things worse. If issues remain unaddressed for too long, the relationship may begin to feel strained or disconnected. What started as a small, avoidable issue can snowball into something much bigger because there has been no opportunity for growth, no space for honest communication, and no chance to resolve the underlying tension. This dynamic is not limited to romantic relationships, but can be seen in friendships, family relationships, and even professional settings. In any relationship, when we consistently avoid addressing our concerns, we end up withdrawing from the other person emotionally, even if we don't consciously realize it. That withdrawal can manifest in ways that make the relationship feel less intimate, less trusting, and ultimately less fulfilling. Instead of working through problems together, we're silently drifting further apart. It's important to understand that avoiding hard conversations doesn't mean we're avoiding just one issue. It's the beginning of avoiding many issues. And as we withdraw emotionally, the relationship loses its depth. Over time, avoidance transforms into something more destructive than just an absence of communication. It becomes an absence of genuine connection. The more we avoid, the more isolated we become, and the distance we create is harder and harder to close. Avoidance fuels unresolved conflict, and this is one of the most detrimental effects it has on relationships. In the short term, it can feel easier to ignore problems or to sweep them under the rug, especially when a situation is emotionally charged. But in reality, when conflicts are avoided, they don't go away. They simply get buried, waiting to resurface later, often in more explosive and damaging ways. The tension that builds from unresolved conflict is like a pressure cooker. The longer the issue is ignored, the more pressure accumulates, and when it finally bursts, the consequences can be far worse than if the issue had been addressed earlier. When conflict is avoided, it means that the underlying emotions, whether it's anger, hurt, disappointment, or fear, are left unspoken. The person who feels wronged or upset may not feel understood or validated, which leads to a growing sense of frustration. On the other hand, the person who is avoiding the conflict may believe they're doing the right thing by keeping the peace, but in reality, they're just postponing the inevitable. Avoiding tough conversations is a temporary solution that ultimately prevents the necessary emotional processing and resolution from taking place. This avoidance creates a dangerous cycle where the issue is never resolved, but the emotional baggage continues to build. As time goes on, each unresolved conflict adds more weight to the relationship, often leading to feelings of resentment or bitterness. Each person may begin to feel unheard or unappreciated. Over time, these feelings can accumulate and erode trust, creating an environment where both individuals are walking on eggshells, too afraid to bring up concerns because of past avoidance. This cycle leads to a lack of closure, leaving the individuals in a state of emotional limbo. Moreover, unresolved conflict can distort the way we view the other person and the relationship itself. When issues are avoided, the narrative we create about the other person can become skewed. We might start assuming things about their intentions or character based on a lack of communication rather than discussing our concerns openly. This can lead to misunderstandings, misinterpretations, and ultimately a breakdown in trust. By not addressing conflict, we also miss out on opportunities for growth. Conflict, though uncomfortable, is often a pathway to deeper understanding. It challenges us to listen, to empathize, and to find common ground. When we avoid conflict, we prevent the relationship from evolving. We prevent ourselves from learning how to handle disagreements constructively. Conflict resolution is a critical skill that strengthens relationships by allowing both parties to come together, compromise, and build a more resilient connection. But when that skill is never developed because we consistently avoid conflict, the relationship remains stagnant and shallow in the long run. Avoidance doesn't make problems disappear. It simply allows them to fester and grow more complex. What could have been a small issue addressed early on becomes a much larger one that might feel impossible to fix later. And the longer we avoid, the more difficult it becomes to navigate the conversation when we finally decide to face it. Avoidance keeps us trapped in a cycle of unresolved conflict that ultimately weakens the bond between us and those we care about. Avoidance stunts growth both individually and relationally by keeping us stuck in our comfort zones and denying us the opportunity to confront challenges that could lead to personal and relational development. Growth, whether it's in the context of our own emotional maturity or the strength of a relationship, requires us to step outside of our comfort zones. It requires us to face difficult emotions, confront uncomfortable truths, and take the risk of being vulnerable. However, avoidance prevents all of that from happening. When we avoid challenges, whether it's a tough conversation, a confrontation, or addressing a problem, we're essentially telling ourselves that we're not capable of handling it. We choose comfort over progress, and in doing so, we delay our own personal growth. Think about the last time you faced something difficult in your life, something that felt overwhelming or intimidating. Maybe it was a confrontation with someone you care about, or perhaps it was dealing with an issue you had been putting off for months. In the moments when you finally addressed it, you likely felt a sense of relief, and in some cases, even pride for having faced it head on. The discomfort that came with confronting the situation wasn't permanent, but the sense of accomplishment and growth that followed lasted far longer. Avoidance denies us this same sense of growth. It keeps us stagnant, and over time, that stagnation begins to take a toll. In relationships, avoidance can have a similar effect. When we avoid the difficult issues, whether it's a disagreement with a partner, unresolved family dynamics, or a conversation about expectations, we're not giving the relationship the chance to grow stronger. Relationships evolve through challenges. The moments when two people disagree or when emotions run high are often the moments that define the strength of their connection. It's in the resolution of conflict and the willingness to face uncomfortable issues together that trust and intimacy are built. But when avoidance enters the picture, growth is halted. The relationship remains at a superficial level, never evolving into something deeper and more meaningful. Furthermore, when we avoid dealing with tough issues, we miss out on opportunities to learn and grow as individuals. Every conflict or difficult moment is a learning experience. It teaches us how to communicate better, how to empathize, and how to handle adversity. Without those lessons, we fail to develop the emotional intelligence that is critical for building strong, resilient relationships. In a way, avoidance holds us back from becoming the best versions of ourselves. We stay in a state of emotional adolescence, afraid of discomfort and unwilling to embrace the challenges that can lead to personal evolution. Relationally, avoidance also prevents growth in intimacy and trust. As we continue to avoid difficult conversations, we create a sense of emotional distance that prevents us from truly understanding one another. Growth in a relationship requires openness, vulnerability, and the ability to navigate conflict. Without the willingness to face the tough stuff together, we deprive the relationship of the opportunity to evolve into something stronger and more fulfilling. What might have been a small hurdle that could have brought the two of you closer together instead becomes an unaddressed issue that lingers, hindering progress. In the grand scheme of things, avoidance not only stunts our personal growth, but also limits the potential of our relationship. By refusing to face challenges, we cut ourselves off from the opportunities that would help us grow, both individually and as a couple, leaving us trapped in a cycle of stagnation rather than progression. The discomfort that comes with addressing difficult situations may feel unbearable in the moment, but it's this discomfort that pushes us forward, builds resilience, and ultimately leads to greater fulfillment and connection. Avoidance feeds fear and doubt, creating a cycle that traps us in a world of insecurity and emotional distance. When we consistently avoid difficult situations or uncomfortable conversations, we're not just protecting ourselves from momentary discomfort, we're feeding a deeper fear that, over time, becomes more controlling and pervasive. The more we avoid, the more our fears grow, and the more doubt seeps into our hearts and minds. This cycle is both self-reinforcing and destructive, as it keeps us stuck in a state of paralysis rather than empowering us to confront and conquer our anxieties. At the core of avoidance is fear. We fear conflict, we fear judgment, we fear rejection, and perhaps most powerfully, we fear vulnerability. When we avoid dealing with something that scares us, we temporarily feel safe, but we're also telling ourselves that we aren't capable of handling it. Each time we sidestep an uncomfortable situation, we reinforce the belief that we are weak, incapable, or unworthy of facing our challenges. This only strengthens the fear, making it harder to confront the next challenge and the next one after that. Instead of gaining confidence through overcoming obstacles, we begin to feel more powerless and trapped by the very things that scare us. The impact of avoidance on our relationships is equally profound. When we avoid addressing difficult issues with others, we're not just avoiding the conversation, we're also creating doubt in the relationship itself. We start to wonder if the other person truly cares about us or if they're willing to work through challenges with us. On the other hand, the person who is avoiding the issue might be convinced that they are protecting the relationship by not stirring up trouble. But what happens is that both people are left questioning their feelings, the stability of the relationship, and whether they can truly trust one another. The avoidance of communication creates a fog of uncertainty that clouds the connection between individuals. Fear and doubt also manifest internally. When we avoid confronting our feelings or expressing our needs, we create a disconnect within ourselves. We may begin to question our own emotions. Doubts creep in about whether we deserve to be heard, and we start to lose trust in our own ability to handle tough situations. This self-doubt eats away at our confidence, leaving us vulnerable to feeling inadequate and insecure in future interactions. The more we avoid, the more that fear grows. Over time, it becomes a larger and more insurmountable barrier. It feeds on our anxiety and builds a narrative that we're incapable of managing life's challenges, further isolating us from the people around us and from our own potential. Avoidance, in essence, makes our fears bigger and more difficult to confront. What's critical to realize is that fear and doubt are not permanent states. They are temporary feelings that can be overcome. But avoidance only prolongs the fear, allowing it to grow when we face our fears and take action to address what scares us. Whether it's having a tough conversation, confronting an issue, or simply expressing vulnerability, we shrink the power that fear holds over us. With each challenge we face head on, we build resilience, trust, and clarity. Avoidance may give us momentary relief, but it ultimately keeps us trapped in a cycle of fear, doubt, and inaction. By choosing to confront the things we fear, we break free from that cycle and open ourselves up to greater emotional freedom and deeper, more authentic relationships. In conclusion, the impact of avoidance on relationships cannot be overstated. Avoidance, whether in the form of sidestepping difficult conversations or ignoring emotional discomfort, slowly but surely distances us from those we care about. While it may initially appear as a way to protect ourselves or maintain peace, avoidance actually undermines the very foundation of authentic connection. When we avoid expressing our true thoughts, emotions, and vulnerabilities, we prevent ourselves from experiencing the richness of deep, meaningful relationships. The most profound connections are built on honesty, openness, and the willingness to embrace discomfort for the sake of growth. Without facing these challenges, we settle for a shallow version of connection, missing out on the opportunity to truly understand and be understood by those around us. Furthermore, avoidance creates an invisible emotional distance that grows over time. What may start as a small gap in communication or a skipped conversation can over time evolve into a canyon of misunderstanding and resentment. As we repeatedly avoid addressing issues, whether big or small, we unintentionally withdraw emotionally, and in doing so, we rob ourselves and others of the chance to work through conflicts and strengthen the bond. This growing emotional gap leads to a sense of isolation, even when we're physically present, and over time, the relationship begins to wither as trust and intimacy are eroded. The longer we avoid, the harder it becomes to bridge that distance, making it more difficult to restore what was lost. Avoidance also breeds unresolved conflict, which, if left unchecked, can poison a relationship over time. The things left unsaid and the issues left unaddressed do not simply disappear. They simmer beneath the surface, creating an undercurrent of tension that eventually impacts every aspect of the relationship. Instead of finding resolution, we hold on to anger, frustration, or confusion, which only amplifies over time. Unresolved conflict leads to a lack of closure, leaving both parties stuck in a state of emotional limbo. Instead of using these challenges as an opportunity to learn, compromise, and grow together, avoidance keeps us stuck in a cycle of unacknowledged issues that continue to pile up, weakening the relationship's foundation. Moreover, avoidance stunts both personal and relational growth. Growth is not a product of comfort. It is born from challenge, discomfort, and adversity. When we choose avoidance, we are denying ourselves the chance to grow emotionally, mentally, and relationally. Every tough conversation or challenging moment presents an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, our partners, and how we can navigate life's challenges together. Avoidance keeps us in a state of stagnation, emotionally and relationally. By choosing not to face our issues, we prevent the evolution of the relationship, keeping it stuck at a superficial level, unable to progress into something deeper and more fulfilling. Similarly, on a personal level, avoiding discomfort prevents us from building emotional resilience, empathy, and the tools needed to manage future challenges. Without those experiences, we remain in a state of emotional adolescence, unable to develop the strength and maturity that come from confronting difficulties head-on. Lastly, avoidance feeds fear and doubt, creating a cycle of insecurity that affects both our inner world and our relationships. Each time we avoid, we reinforce the idea that we are incapable of handling difficult situations, and that belief strengthens our fears. The more we avoid, the bigger and more overwhelming our fears become. We create an emotional distance, not only from others, but also from our own potential. Avoidance keeps us trapped in a world of uncertainty and self-doubt, preventing us from fully engaging with life and the people around us. The fears that avoidance feeds are often magnified by our silence, and the more we stay silent, the more the fear grows. The antidote to this cycle is not to avoid, but to face our fears. Whether it's a difficult conversation, a challenge in the relationship, or simply the vulnerability of being ourselves. By choosing to confront our fears, we break free from this cycle and open ourselves up to personal growth and deeper, more authentic relationships. Only by embracing discomfort can we begin to experience the fullness of connection and the freedom that comes from living an unavoidant life. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. It's been a pleasure discussing the impact of avoidance on relationships and exploring how we can grow and connect more deeply by facing discomfort head on. I hope the insights shared have sparked reflection and inspiration for you to build more authentic and meaningful connections moving forward. If you have any more questions or need further guidance, feel free to reach out. I'm always here to help. Until then, take care, embrace the challenges, and continue to grow in every area of your life. Goodbye and best wishes on your journey towards stronger relationships.